Hello，歡迎各位。咁今日係我哋中原移民顧問主辦嘅一個美國 EB5 投資移民嘅網上講座啦。咁好高興今日咧，我係中原移民嘅顧問總監崔偉輝嚇。咁歡迎大家。咁我哋第一部分咧就會由我去簡介呢個 EB5 嘅項目，同埋我哋會 share 一下我哋嘅成功個案啦，大家會睇到我哋廣告上面嘅實例啦。第二部分嘅話咧，就會係由我哋嘅美國移民律師Nick 嘅話咧，去同我哋介紹下美國移民計劃嘅條例啦，同埋政策嘅展望嘅。Hi Nick，how are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. So, and then you will be responsible for the second part. So, and第三部分咧就會係我哋嘅美國嘅地產發展商 Lightstone， 佢哋會介紹佢哋其中一個項目啦，叫做 NYC Lightstone Towers 嘅，咁喺 New York 嘅，咁佢哋嘅代表咧就係Oli Marks 嘅。Hi
Oli。Hi Anderson. How are you?
Hi, nice to meet you again. Okay, yeah. And then I will start my part. Okay.I will speak in Cantonese first, and then you can speak in English later. OK， 咁我而家開始我個講座啦。咁首先咧就係今日咧呢個 PowerPoint 咧，各樣嘅 PowerPoint 咧，大家可以問我哋嘅同事去攞翻嘅，因為尤其係我呢一部分咧，我會講得稍為比較快少少，因為今日嘅內容都比較豐富嘅。咁首先介紹下我哋自己先啦。咁我哋中原都好多朋友會知道㗎啦，中原地產啊、中原集團啊。咁我哋中原移民咧，其實就係03年嘅時候已經係提供緊移民服務㗎啦。08年咧就成立咗獨立子公司，即係距今都10幾年㗎啦。咁咧呢度係 highlight 少少啦，我哋喺中原集團內部都有唔少嘅獎項啦，咁攞咗嘅，咁施生啊、陳生啊等等，咁都同我哋頒個獎啦。咁呢一個 point 咧，其實就想講俾大家聽咧，其實我哋係做咗移民行業都好耐一段時間㗎啦。咁唔似係坊間係有啲移民公司可能19年年中見到個生意嘅時候先至設立，咁大家要留意少少啦嚇。咁另外咧就係好多嘅報章嘅消息啦。如果你打我個名嘅話，落去 Google 嘅話咧，都會見到不斷會有啲舊嘅新聞啊、新嘅講政策嘅資訊啦。你打崔偉輝3個字就會見到㗎啦。唔同嘅媒體啦，包括咗報紙都會有嘅嚇。咁另外咧，我哋都喺英國領事館嗰度咧搞過英國嗰邊嘅投資移民嘅講座嘅。咁相信都冇乜邊個顧問可以喺領事館入邊搞活動嘅，咁update 下大家啦。咁我哋有世界各個唔同嘅移民項目嘅，咁今日我哋係講美國啦，有啲項目我哋會陪埋客人去外國，有啲就未必需要。呢個係我自己嘅團隊咧，我哋自己嘅團隊咧就我係崔偉輝啦，咁有Anthony 啦、Michael 卡卡咁樣嘅。咁我哋4個咧就主要係做一啲英語系嘅國家嘅，英美加澳洲咁樣啦。咁咧我哋中原移民好多朋友會問有同其他移民顧問有咩分別嘅？我哋係尤其着重呢個前期嘅評估。我哋可以做到你個移民嘅服務俾大家，咁但係嗰個服務係咪你哋需要嘅咧？嗰個身份有張綠卡又係咪你哋需要嘅咧？或者其他國家都係，我哋會説明清楚先嘅，以免你買錯咗服務啊！咁另外啦，好多朋友咧都對移民咧，其實係為咗小朋友嘅。咁咧就我哋喺 individual 嘅諮詢嘅時候咧，都會有各樣嘅移民相關嘅資訊俾大家，包括升學。咁但係因為今日嘅時間比較倉促，升學呢邊咧我講得快少少，我只係點提嘅啫。有需要嘅話，大家可以揾翻各位同事啦嚇，包括我自己啦。咁其實升學嗰度咧，呢度我唔講啦嚇，佢嗰個係嗰個 grade 嘅情況嘅啫，同香港個學制嘅比較。咁呢度同埋提一提啦，就係嗰個攞咗綠卡之後咧，其實可以讀公立學校嘅，公立學校就免費啦。如果你冇綠卡嘅話，你要讀私校啦，個費用係點樣啦？咁大學嘅學費如你有當地人嘅身份有綠卡會平好多啦，冇綠卡會貴好多啊。 咁啊呢個唔詳細講。咁啊學費嗰度咧就都上升得幾快嘅。咁啊同埋個入學率嗰度，你以 Stanford 同埋MIT 嚟講咧，基本上你一個海外生收一個海外生，等於收8個至到12個嘅本地生啊，所以你有張綠卡嘅話，就已經提高咗嗰個成功率好高㗎啦嚇。咁啊呢度咧係一個詳細啲嘅比較啦。咁啊關於有綠卡同埋冇綠卡，咁啊提一提就係話其實有啲科目咧，你有綠卡先可以讀得嘅，同埋你喺一啲實習嘅機會咧，有綠卡同埋冇綠卡嗰啲待遇嗰啲條件亦都唔同㗎嚇。咁啊呢一部分嘅話，詳細各位家長想知道嘅話咧，就可以再同我哋傾。咁我哋呢個核心嘅計劃咧，就係講緊 EB5 嘅移民嘅。咁啊，簡單介紹下個重點先。咁啊，移民項目嚟講咧，EB5 係嗰個政策其實係最清晰㗎啦。因為佢淨係講錢嘅啫。90萬嘅美金，用90萬嘅美金嘅投資咧，創造10個職位。而你嘅錢嗰90萬咧，你證明到係乾淨嘅錢，即係做到個有效嘅資金來源證明咧，咁就已經基本上係合格。OK 冇問題㗎，可以做到㗎啦。咁另外個好處咧就係EB5 咧其實係冇年齡、學歷、語言、營商等等嘅要求嘅，講錢就得㗎啦嚇。咁另外咧就係你攞到個永居嘅身份嘅時候，呢個係一個美國嘅好處嘅，攞到張綠卡啦。其實你未必需要即時去住嘅，你可以自己選擇。你每半年登陸美國一次就可以保留嗰個綠卡㗎啦。咁同埋咧，你一開始嘅時候會攞到個conditional green card 啦，有條件綠卡啦。咁但係嗰個 condition 咧，其實純粹係你唔可以撤走嗰90萬嘅投資嘅資金嘅啫，都係講錢嘅啫。咁所以咧就其他嘅待遇，你喺當地讀書啊、工作啊，其實同當地人係一樣嘅。咁以呢一個香港出世嘅申請人嚟講嘅話咧，咁就係最快。咁一年就大概1年就可以攞到個 conditional green card 㗎啦。咁因為我廣告上邊都 show 咗啦，如果係嗰個投資移民咧，其實最快你4個月，我陣間都可以有啲實例可以攞到㗎啦。咁所以夾埋申請埋張綠卡咧，咁大概12個月咧，1年就 OK 啦。咁另外咧就你如果要攞埋個永久綠卡無條件綠卡嘅話咧，咁大概要4年啦。你要入籍嘅話就冇得急嘅，咁基本上大概6年。而且尾嗰5年，你 total 嗰5年入邊要喺美國度住30個月，30個月除以5，咪即係每年住6個月咯，平均。但係佢冇規定你一定要每年住6個月，你可以頭2.5年全部唔住，每半年翻去一次，美國一次，後嘅2年半咧就全部住晒，咁都 OK 嘅。咁所以個時間安排上邊都幾 flexible 㗎。子女升學嗰方面咧，就其實頭先提過啦，呢度唔重複啦嚇。另外咧，提一提就係其實你一家3代都可以經呢個投資移民去攞到個綠卡嘅。舉例講啦，我同我嘅太太攞咗綠卡，攞埋個 passport 之後咧，其實我可以申請我嘅爹哋媽咪、太太嘅爹哋媽咪咁樣去美國嘅。攞咗 passport 之後，再申請上一代咧。最快5至9個月就已經可以攞到綠卡㗎啦。咁當然啦，21歲以下嘅小朋友咧，同埋我哋兩公婆一齊去就冇問題嘅。咁所以咧，基本上3代人都可以去㗎啦。而另外一個重點咧就係有啲朋友咧，個小朋友可能已經11歲10幾歲咁樣，佢可以考慮用小朋友做主申請人，因為佢學生嚟啫嘛。佢冇收入㗎嘛，咁咪唔使交稅咯。具體嘅情況每個家庭唔同啊，咁呢度唔詳述啦。有機會嘅時候再同大家1對1諮詢嘅時候詳細傾啦。另外呢度咧就係講緊 EB5 係啲咩嚟啦？EB 嘅意思即係 employment base 咁解啦。簡而言之咧，其實呢個 EB5 嘅計劃咧就係你係一個老闆你投資90萬。去創造10個就業職位，而你嘅投資咧係需要存在風險嘅。我呢個 mouse 呢度圈住呢度Capital is at risk and invest in a new commercial enterprise， 同埋要 create at least 10 full-time jobs。咁咧我自己做顧問嘅時候咧，就會比較強調就係嗰個移民政策 一定要好清晰。咁所以我中意係講多少少政策嘅嘢嘅，同埋中意 quote 政府公布嘅官方資料啊。咁呢度講一講啦，佢其實呢個來源於呢個 Policy Manual Volume 6 Part G Chapter 2入邊嘅資訊啦。同大家總結一下，究竟 EB5 嘅移民方式有幾多種先？其實得兩樣大嘅方向嘅啫。第一個就係你自己做老闆，自己開間公司你可能180萬咁樣開間公司，咁請10個人，跟住你可能開餐館，你做咩都得嘅。其實係一個business 就 OK 噶啦，新開嘅 business。咁你捱夠大概5年嘅話咧，咁你係可以攞到嗰張綠卡嘅。但係因為個經營嘅business 嘅風險咧，其實都幾大噶嘛。你如果自己創業嘅話，根據啲數字嚟講咧，香港政府都有公布啦。頭2年執嘅公司有85% 咁多嘅。咁所以咧就一般市面上而家大概90%都係用 regional centre 嘅方式去投資做投資移民嘅，而且個投資額咧只係需要$90萬嘅啫，cut 一半。咁同埋咧就有唔同方式嘅項目啦，可能係一啲酒店啦，可能係一啲住宅啦、度假村啦、養老院啲地產項目啦。Regional Centre 嗰部分咧係我哋阿 Nick 咧之後會係比較詳細咁樣去介紹嗰啲 policy 上邊嘅嘢嘅，嗰啲 regulation 上邊。咁我呢一 part 度咧就唔詳細講啦。咁我 highlight 一個重點俾大家咧，就係你揀項目嘅時候，你梗係要揀一啲穩健嘅項目啦。所以我哋中原移民顧問咧可以點樣幫到大家咧，就係我哋係有唔同嘅項目啦，我唔會就逼你淨係例如今日係Lightstone 嘅 NYC Lightstone Towers 嘅，咁我唔會逼你淨係去睇佢哋嘅項目，我哋有好幾個項目俾你一齊去揀。咁但係咧，因為項目嘅資料其實好多嘅，你見到我呢度咧係真係咁厚嘅咁所以咧你最好就係話我哋你揀咗可能2至3個發展商嘅項目去，我哋幫你約見發展商，佢哋去幫你介紹佢哋嘅項目。你可能揀到一個之後，咁你先至去詳細睇佢啲文件啦。咁你睇咗啲文件之後有 question，佢係可以再問啦。你可以轉嘅。你話我睇完之後唔啱嘅，咁你咪轉另一個項目咯。咁所以咧另外就係有一啲朋友就會都會問揀項目嘅時候有啲咩簡單有啲咩注意嘅事項啊。咁我個人嚟講咧，我會覺得係你揀嘅如果以地產項目嚟計咧，你揀一啲地產商就應該係佢本身都係做開地產嘅，同埋有 reputation 嘅，有信譽嘅咁可能佢1980幾年已經做緊地產㗎啦咁同埋嗰個投資個項目喺一個大嘅城市啦，可能 New York Los Angeles 啦嘅項目啦同埋最好就係市中心啦。而家市中心要180萬嘅話，就市中心旁邊嗰啲咧可以做90萬嗰啲項目啦。因為你越近市中心，你塊地係越貴啊嘛，咁點都係好啲啊嘛咁下一個 point 咧就同大家總結一下個 key 嘅一啲 keywords 你要考慮 EB5 嘅時候咧要注意嘅。第一個就係移民局係要求大家嘅投資咧係存在風險嘅，係要 at risk 嘅。咁同埋要投資喺一啲新嘅公司入邊new commercial enterprise。咁地產項目咧就好合適啦，喺呢個喺呢樣嘢上面。點解咁講咧？就係因為地產公司本身佢開一個新項目，起一層新嘅樓咧，佢都會開間新公司去管理噶嘛。咁佢本身嗰個商業模式已經係咁樣啦，就可以滿足到移民嗰個要求啦。咁另外啦，創造10個就業職位嘅話，因為地產商最多嘅就係建築工人啊嘛，咁佢肯定係好多職位可以 offer 到俾大家啦。通常而家都係平均一個申請人都唔止10個職位創造到嘅，可能係20幾個30個甚至50個都有嘅。咁睇唔同嘅 project 啦咁另外咧，大概頭尾咧就係由申請至到攞綠卡，至到等2年，跟住再申請埋個無條件綠卡，頭尾大概需要5年嘅時間啦。咁你攞到綠卡之後，你咪攞翻嗰啲投資額咯。咁投資咧都會有部分項目會有利息嘅。咁呢個係每個 project 都唔同嘅。咁我哋喺選擇 project 嘅時候，我喺右下角呢度咧就 highlight 咗一啲 criteria 你需要點樣去比較唔同嘅項目咁唔同項目咧有啲優點嘅同時咧，咁有啲就可能冇咁優勢嘅地方另一個項目係有優勢嘅地方，就可能另一啲 point 又冇咁優勢嘅，咁所以咧你要綜合咁樣去睇例如可能有啲朋友會覺得係一啲第三方嘅評級機構咧，啲 credit rating 啦，例如 Moody's 穆迪Standard Poor 標準普爾咁樣，佢哋會有啲 A1、A 加或者 BBB 等等去評級嗰啲公司噶嘛，你咪可以參考一下咯，係嘛？咁去到呢一 part 嘅話咧，就係分享一啲成功嘅案例啦咁我哋係呢個最快嘅例子咧，就係最快嘅唔係話每個 case 都一樣一定咁快咁就係用咗140幾日嘅啫，咁大概4個月左右啦，4個零5個月啦咁就已經係批到嗰個投資移民噶啦，咁所以如果你話快嘅。幾個月已經批到投資移民，咁你咪仲再用3至6個月之間去申請埋嗰個綠卡咯，咁所以你咪1年可以最快可以攞到張綠卡咯。咁但係咩條件可以批得快啲咧？咁有幾樣嘢啦，咁第一樣嘢就係你基本上你需要係揀區域中心嘅項目啦，因為區域中心嘅項目咧就肯定係符合嗰個移民嘅要求嘅，但係政府係唔會幫你睇個風險嘅風險係自己睇，但係佢可以攞嚟俾你申請移民咧，你區域中心嗰啲項目就肯定係㗎啦。咁佢有 I-924B 嘅資格會快啲啦。咁另外咧就係引入嗰個 EB5 投資之前咧已經完成咗融資安排。咩意思咧？就係話我啲錢已經準備好㗎啦。其實你投資俾佢都係借錢俾嗰個地產商，你嘅息會低啲啦。老實講，佢係慳咗利息嘅啫。如果冇你嗰筆錢嘅話，佢一樣可以做到嘅，一樣可以動工完工嘅。咁只不過佢俾嘅利息高啲嘅啫。咁咪唔會影響到個工程嘅進度咯，係咪？咁充足嘅就業名額啦，咁建築工人、地產項目一般都冇問題嘅呢個。咁我哋可以幫到你去 monitor 成個嘅移民嘅 project 啦。律師啦，律師團隊就好似阿 Nick 嘅公司Miller Mayer 咁樣啦，咁可以幫到大家啦。另外就係大家申請人嘅資金來源嗰個狀況啦，就都會幾影響嗰個審批嘅時間嘅同埋嗰個遇到咩嘢移民官啦，有啲移民官審批會快啲嘅。我哋 show 出嚟呢個例子咧，具體少少咧，其實個主申請人咧係單身嘅。喺美國度留學嘅大學生嚟嘅，申請嘅時候嘅當時佢係用 F1 嘅簽證喺美國度讀緊書嘅佢係同時攞住個 F1 簽證去申請個 EB5 嘅。個資金來源會比較簡單嘅，喺佢嘅 case 入邊，因為係父母嘅政府嗰啲退休金嚟嘅，咁佢一次過出咗筆退休金一筆過咁樣，咁亦都唔需要有啲咩好多嘅 transaction， 咁所以就比較容易去 review 啦。遞交日期就係19年嘅10月14號，20年嘅3月4號就已經批咗出嚟㗎啦。大概4個月啦，140幾日啦就140幾日就包埋工作日嘅。如果你唔包工作日咧，就大概係4個月左右啦呢度係其中一個嘅例子。仲有其他例子嘅，咁但係唔可以話逐個咁樣去詳細咁樣講。我會喺呢度 show 俾大家睇，就係話亦都有其他例子係10月19年10月申請，3月亦都批㗎啦，都係5個月啫。19年8月申請，咁又係3月批，大概係7個月左右啦，係咪？另外就19年9月申請嘅，7月又批咗，大概10個月啦。另外9月申請，7月又批咗，又係大概10個月啦呢度係一個I-526，即係投資移民嗰個申請嘅嗰個case study 個 sharing 嘅。另外啦，喺 I-526嘅時候咧，個申請咧有啲情況底下等得耐嘅話，咁可以係申請個加速嘅加速申請。個加速申請咧就唔代表批嗰個投資移民批 I-526嘅咁咧加速批咗俾你，就等於係批准你個 I-526投資移民個申請係可以打尖移民局會先睇你嗰個 case 咁呢度咧，我亦都 list out 咗移民局上邊嘅USCIS 上邊嘅 terms 啦，就會講咗有啲咩原因啦。咁其實有主要4大原因嘅啫，實際上會比較多用嘅都係一啲叫做urgent humanitarian reasons 啦，一啲人道主義嘅理由啦。咁但係每個家庭嘅情況唔同啊。呢個詳細嘅話，咁就我哋都係 individual 諮詢嘅時候可以幫到大家去解答詳細嘅情況嘅。我呢度亦都係 show 一啲例子俾大家啦嚇，一啲加速申請嘅案例。咁我哋今年嘅2月17號啦，獲批一個 case 啦。咁嗰個 case 咧就係2月1號去申請嘅，即係用咗16日嘅啫嚇。咁另外咧就係另一個 case 咧就係3月19號申請嘅，3月25號6日就批咗出嚟㗎啦。咁我左邊呢度咧係移民嗰個封信嚟嘅 official 嘅 letter 嚟嘅。咁另外一邊咧，其實我 show 佢唔同嘅形式嘅，因為移民局咧都會電郵通知大家嘅。咁當然啦，你委派咗律師就通知律師啦嚇。咁電郵嘅資訊official letter 嘅資訊都會有嘅，唔同嘅形式都會有嚇。咁咧係我嘅部分咧，其實就到呢度為止嘅。咁第二部分咧就會我哋嘅美國嘅移民律師去同大家去解説啦。咁我強調一次先嗱，因為今日嘅內容會比較豐富嘅，咁所以咧講座就不設問答不設問答環節，就冇 Q&A 嘅嚇。咁但係個講座所用嘅 PowerPoint 咧係可以 share 俾大家嘅。如果大家suppose 大家會有相關嘅同事去跟進，如果你話你冇嘅，咁你可以 WhatsApp 翻俾我96462316去問我攞翻呢啲 PowerPoint。之後Nick 話同埋Oli 嘅 PowerPoint 你都可以攞嘅。OK， thanks for waiting. Hi Nick. I have finished my part, so please start your part.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Nick Hinrichsen. I'm the managing partner of Miller Mayer's EB5 practice. I have been until recently based in Asia, first 4 years in Shanghai and then 2 years in Saigon. So I would have very much enjoyed to have done this presentation face-to-face, but this is certainly a second best. It is nice to see the world beginning to come back to some semblance of normalcy. Certainly here in the United States, many people are starting to get vaccines, and it seems we're very close to moving beyond COVID. So that is very good news for obviously everybody and also for the EB5 program. So let me give you an introduction to Miller Mayer. So you are going to hear from Oli about the specific investment opportunity that will be your vehicle for emigrating to the United States. I am going to talk to you about the immigration components involved in the EB5 process. It's important for me to note that I am independent of Lightstone in this process. I only represent the potential investors before the United States government. So I don't have any affiliation with Lightstone. I independently review their project documents and independently represent you throughout the EB5 process. So Miller Mayer is one of the leading EB5 law firms, really immigration law firms in the United States. We were founded in 1985. We're headquartered in a place called Ithaca, New York, which is very famous because it's home to one of the best universities in the United States, one of the Ivy League universities called Cornell University. Many of our partners and associates and staff are graduates of Cornell University. We are a full-service immigration law firm. We do everything within the bounds of immigration law. including family-based and employment-based visa categories, immigrant and non-immigrant visa categories. And I think that's important for you to know because everyone, even if they're only doing EB-5, some people have complicated immigration backgrounds or issues that have come up, and we can help guide you through those issues, as well as other immigration categories that you may be considering for some of your family members while you wait for EB-5, like F visas, for example. And we've been recognized by a lot of organizations for our accomplishments in immigration law and EB-5 law specifically. We are listed in Who's Who, Chambers International, Super Lawyers and Best Lawyers. Many organizations and peers have named us as a leading immigration law firm. I'm proud to say that both Steve Yale-Lair, who is the founder of our immigration practice, and myself were recently recognized by EB-5 Investor Magazine as 2 of the top 25 EB-5 attorneys in the world. And it's quite unusual for a law firm to have 2 of their lawyers mentioned. So we're very proud of that achievement. And that's a designation that was bestowed upon us by our peers. Other immigration professionals and EB-5 professionals chose us among other attorneys. Steve Yale-Lair is a very well-known figure in EB-5 and in immigration. He's a professor of law at Cornell University. He has also testified before the United States Congress on EB-5 and immigration issues. And he is the founder and president emeritus of II-USA. That is the Association to Invest in the USA. By far the largest EB-5 trade group that advocates on behalf of the EB-5 industry in the United States. About 90% of all funds invested in EB-5 are those regional centers are members of II-USA. Now, Steve, if you Google his name, you will see that he is quoted almost every day in major news outlets in the United States and around the world. And he also regularly appears on television. So he really is a sought-after authority on immigration law, both now under the Trump administration and under the Biden administration, where we're seeing big changes in immigration law. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in my presentation. So Miller-Mayer, as I mentioned, we've been around for a long time, and we have in fact been involved in the EB-5 program ever since it started way back in the 1990s. To date, we've filed over 6,000 individual I-526 petitions, which has resulted in over 10,000 green cards for individual investors and their family members and dependents. That is a very big number. That's a lot of people whose lives that we have helped to change, and that's something that we're very, very proud of. Because we file so many petitions with the US government, we have a very good sense of what they require in order to approve those petitions. And you can see that reflected in our approval rates. For I-526 petitions, it's almost 100%. The only denials that we've had were some cases out of China that resulted because of certain currency control restrictions, but no project denials in those I-526 denials. And for the I-829 petition, which is arguably the most important filing in the EB-5 process, that is the petition that removes conditions on your green card, we have 100% approval rate. So we're very happy about that. Now, we also represent regional centers and developers in structuring EB-5 projects. And to date, we've worked on about 120 different EB-5 projects, helping those clients raise over $3 billion in EB-5 equity. As I mentioned earlier, we are not regional center counsel to Lightstone on this transaction. And so there's no conflict of interest at all. Again, Miller-Mayer is not engaged by Lightstone to structure this project. That said, in my role as representing individual investors, we do our own due diligence on Lightstone's project to make sure that it complies with EB5 rules and regulations. And indeed it does. Lightstone has done an exemplary job of structuring their projects to comply with current EB5 rules and regulations. And they have a tremendous track record in doing that over the years. So EB5 stands for Employment-Based Fifth Category. The category was created by the United States Congress back in the 90s to spur economic growth into the United States. They made about 10,000 visas available in the EB5 category every year. And for Hong Kong investors, that's notable because if a country exceeds their limit, so each country also has a cap of 7% of those visas. So if a country uses more than their allotment, then a waiting line is created. For example, for a mainland-born Chinese applicant right now, the wait is estimated to be between 8 and 10 years. Some say longer, some say a little shorter. That does not apply to mainland-born Hong Kong or Hong Kong-born residents. And that's important to know, though I'm going to talk about some changes in that regard a little bit later. Now, when the program first started, it wasn't as successful as Congress had hoped. So they made a change or sort of created a sub-program called the Regional Center EB5 program in 1992. And that proved to be very successful. What the change allowed the EB5 industry to do is to create special purpose entities by regional centers that are designated to cover a certain geography and certain industries. And these regional centers can create these special purpose entities that can pool investor money together. So instead of under the original EB5 program, you opening your own hotel, for example, under the Regional Center program, you can co-invest alongside many other EB5 investors and invest with professional developers like Lightstone, thus mitigating the economic risk associated with running your own business. That was a huge change that greatly benefited EB5. The other big change and advantage to Regional Center investments is job creation. You have to understand that EB5 is a job creation program. In order for you to get conditions lifted on your conditional green card, you have to show the government that your investment has created at least 10 jobs for US workers. If you're doing an individual investment, if you're opening your own hotel, for example, that can be quite difficult. You have to actually show that you have 10 employees on your payroll that you are paying as a result of the creation of your project. In the regional center context, it's much easier to meet that job creation burden. Regional centers can use something called economic modeling, where you are counting not only the direct employees of the hotel, but also the indirect employees. So for example, a hotel is going, if you're building a hotel, there are cement manufacturers and wood fabricators and glass fabricators, those kinds of downstream economic inputs. Those can be measured and counted by an economist. And so it's much easier for investors in regional center projects to meet that very important job creation requirement. And in fact, that change was instrumental in making EB5 the successful immigration program that it is today. You can see in the chart the tremendous growth in EB5, starting after the financial crisis in 2008, where EB5 emerged as an alternative source of financing, primarily in real estate, but also in other industries. And so EB5 is one of those rare immigration programs that is embraced by both Republicans and Democrats, because it really is a win-win investment structure and immigration structure for the United States. The other benefit to EB5 is its incredible flexibility. Many of the immigration options for individuals wanting to move to the United States have a very high bar to them, and it's quite difficult to get approval. For example, EB1A is for extraordinary ability aliens. So you have to have really achieved a very high level of acclaim in your field. Other avenues are by way of sponsorship by a potential employer. These are all quite difficult categories in which to succeed in obtaining your immigration goals. EB5 is much more flexible. It's a straightforward investment, and the flexibility of the green card is extensive. It affords permanent residency for a principal investor, which is typically a wife or a husband, and then their qualifying dependents, that's unmarried children under 21. You can live and work anywhere you want in the United States. It doesn't have to be where the project that you're investing into is located. So that's a great benefit. That is obviously very different than if you were doing an employment-based green card. There's no English language requirement. Now, you are investing into a business, but there's no day-to-day management requirements that come with that. All of the day-to-day management is done by the regional center and the developer, in this case, Lightstone. So you have a very passive investment role, allowing you to pursue whatever other endeavors in the United States you wish when you arrive. Perhaps one of the most important benefits are the benefits that accrue to kids who are going to school, particularly college-age kids. Those kids can be eligible for financial aid and tuition assistance that would not be available for kids who were coming to the United States as foreign students on an F visa. There are also some schools that have very competitive admission standards, and they only admit a certain percentage of foreign students. As a green card holder, a child would not be subject to those quotas. And so for very competitive schools, a green card holder might have a much better chance of being admitted. Perhaps the most important benefit, though, is that when the child graduates from school, they are immediately part of the US workforce. They don't have to try to find a sponsor or an employer to sponsor them so that they can stay in the United States and work and pursue their career goals. They are immediately part of the American workforce as green card holders, and thus are just as competitive as their fellow graduating American citizen classmates. This is a big advantage. One final benefit I'll mention is that after 5 years of being a green card holder, and that includes the conditional residency period of 2 years, you can apply to become a US citizen. It's not required, but it is an option if you wish to do so. One benefit of doing that is that your parents are then eligible to emigrate also to the United States under an immediate family relative category. So there's no retrogression or no wait for those categories. Immediate family reunification is a stated policy goal of the US immigration rules. And so, it's quite straightforward and simple and relatively fast for you to be able to petition for your parents to come to the United States. What are the steps in EB5? It is a somewhat lengthy process. And it is indeed important for you to consider the service providers that you work with in this process. And the fact that you're listening to this presentation, I think, is a step in that direction. Centiline is a established company in which you can place trust in looking at EB5, both from the investment perspective and the immigration perspective. Lightstone has been around for a long time, and as I mentioned, they have expertise in structuring their investments to also comply with the immigration requirements. And then Miller-Mayer can lead you through the steps involved, the immigration steps involved, and represent you before the US government entities that are involved in the EB5 process. So those entities are, first, the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. That is the agency to which the first EB5 form is submitted. That's called the I-526 petition. That petition has information about your investment and the way that you made the money to make the investment, what we call the source of funds. That is a very important part of EB5, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in my presentation. Once the I-526 petition is approved, the next step is filing a DS-260 petition, which will allow you to get a visa issued in your passport, and that visa permits you to travel to the United States. DS-260 is the immigrant analog of another visa category that you may be familiar with called the DS-160. That is for a non-immigrant visa. So the DS-260 is for the immigrant visa. That is put in your passport and has a validity period of usually about 6 months. And you need to travel to the United States before that visa expires. You book your ticket and fly to New York or Los Angeles, wherever it is you may want to enter the US. And as soon as you are admitted into the US, that visa will be stamped with something called an I-551 stamp. And at that moment in time, you actually become a conditional permanent resident. Later, you'll get the green card in the mail, but it'll have as a start date the same date that your visa was stamped. And that is an important date because that date determines when you take the last step in the EB5 process, and that's filing the I-829 petition to remove the conditions on your 2-year green card and get a permanent green card. That I-829 petition is filed within the 90-day window of the 2-year anniversary of your green card or of you entering the United States. The I-829 petition, as I mentioned earlier, must show the US government that your investment has been sustained. So you can't have your principal EB5 investment repaid to you before you file the I-829 petition. And you have to show the US government that the jobs have been created in virtue of the investment that you made at the I-526 stage. You can see the timeline below. Those are sort of rough estimates. We're seeing I-526 petitions taking about 20 to 24 months now. I should note that it may be for Hong Kong applicants that the possibility of an expedite submitted to the USCIS is possible. We have successfully filed a number of expedite requests very recently to the USCIS that have been approved. So that's definitely something that if you are interested in moving forward with EB5, we can discuss in more detail. And that would significantly reduce the time frame associated with adjudication and enable you to move to the United States much more quickly. Also, it might enable you to avoid some of the changes that may take place in EB5 as a result of legislation. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But let me quickly cover source of funds, because everybody wants to know, well, how do I do this? How do I invest in EB5? And Centiline has deep experience in meeting with clients and strategizing with them about what the best source of funds are. Many clients have multiple options of funding an EB5 investment. The most common source of funds that we see from our Hong Kong clients is either an asset sale, so you own real estate that usually has appreciated significantly in value, and you dispose of that real estate and use the sale proceeds to make your investment in EB5. If you don't want to sell your asset, you can mortgage the asset. You can go to a bank and obtain a loan and use those loan proceeds as your investment. We also see sometimes company loans. So if you have your own company, you can structure a loan from that company and use the proceeds of that loan to invest in EB5. Or very traditionally, and what most people think of when they think of making an investment is earned income. You've had a job, you've worked for many years, and you've saved money, and you use those proceeds to make your investment in EB5. It becomes a little complicated because in addition to the source of funds, the US government wants to be able to follow the path of funds. So that is the movement of the money from the time that you earn it until you invest it in the EB5 regional center. So for example, if you earned income 10 years ago, it's unlikely that money sat in a bank account that entire time. More likely is that you invested that money in various investments over time, and tracing those funds over a 10-year period can be very difficult, sometimes impossible. And that is why many people ultimately elect to do a simpler EB5 funding strategy of selling property or mortgaging property. I will mention, though, that you don't have to use just one source of funds. You can use multiple sources of funds to make up the $900,000 investment amount. So you can mortgage, if you have multiple properties, you can mortgage one, you could sell one, you can use some money from earned income, and gifts are also permitted. So if you have sisters or brothers or parents that have funds that they're willing to loan you, that can also make up part of the source of funds strategy. Subsequent to the price increase, we're seeing many more applications where people are using multiple sources of funds to make up the $900,000. So you no doubt are aware that immigration has been a very hot topic in the United States. Obviously, under the Trump administration, there was a lot of anti-immigration legislation and presidential declarations that were issued that affected many immigration categories and non-immigration categories that the administration felt competed with US workers. Those are all being undone by the Biden administration, which has a much more expansive and liberal view with respect to immigration. That said, EB5 was always sort of an exception. Even the Trump administration exempted EB5 from its visa bans because, again, as I mentioned, it is a program that simply creates jobs at no cost to US taxpayers. So it is a program that is liked by both Republicans and Democrats. And as the United States begins to emerge from COVID, obviously there is a significant economic recovery that needs to take place. And EB5 again finds itself in a situation similar to the one it was in 2008 after the financial crisis then, where it can be a very solid source of financing to help the United States. So there's great excitement about EB5 and EB5's future in the United States. The EB5 Regional Center program, as I mentioned, is sort of a sub-program of the general EB5 immigration category that was created by Congress in 1992. And so that program actually expires every so often, and Congress has to take action to extend that program. And in fact, the EB5 Regional Center program is coming up for expiration on June 30th, 2021. So the US Senate has to take, or the Congress has to take action and extend the program. All indications are that the Congress is going to do that. Again, EB5 is a very, very popular program. But there has been legislation introduced by Senators Leahy and Senators Grassley, both very influential senators, that would significantly change EB5. It would make some changes regarding disclosure. There would be more site visits by the US government to regional centers. There might be some changes to the source of funds. For example, with respect to gifting, there might be limitations placed on the ability to receive gifted proceeds from people that are not direct relatives. We don't know what the final language of any legislation is going to be, so I can't say with any certainty exactly what changes are going to happen if the legislation goes into effect, which most people think it will. But there is certainly an opportunity, if you are interested in EB5, to make an investment before June 30th to take advantage of the current rules as they stand. One change that you should also be aware of is a potential change to the visa numbers. I mentioned earlier that EB5 has about 10,000 visas available. Well, the Biden administration is looking at making a number of changes that could affect that number and affect Hong Kong applicants both positively and negatively. So the first change is currently all individuals immigrating to the United States need their own individual visa number. So for a family, say, of 3, you need 3 of those 10,000 visa numbers. The proposal by the Biden administration is to change that rule and only require 1 visa for the entire family. So that would significantly increase the number of visas available, right? By typically, we estimate a factor of 3 because the average family size in EB5 is about 3. So with that change, you would bring down any potential retrogression risk, though there isn't really a retrogression risk right now for Hong Kong applicants. But if that were to take effect, that would further reduce that risk. The other change that the Biden administration is thinking of is increasing visa numbers across all immigration categories. So it's possible that that the number of visas for EB5 would go from 10,000 to maybe 20,000. We don't know what the numbers are, but that is the discussion. And this would further reduce any risk to Hong Kong residents that they would be subject to a wait line. However, there is one change that is also being considered, and that is removing the per country caps. I mentioned earlier that waiting lines occur because countries can only use 7% of those 10,000 visas. And then if other countries don't use their 7%, only then can a country who has exceeded their demand use those visas. And this is why there's a waiting line right now in countries like India, Vietnam, and China. Actually, only China and Vietnam now only have waiting lines. India no longer does. But nevertheless, there are a number of people in line. Now, if the per country caps were eliminated, there would just be one waiting line. So right now you have a line for each country. If there's only one line, that means that because of the number of applicants that are already pending in China, you may end up with a waiting line, potentially for Hong Kong residents. We don't know exactly how that will play out. It's very difficult to predict what the total numbers are. And of course, I mentioned the variables of changing the way visa numbers are counted in terms of 1 per family or 1 for each family member, and also increasing the visa numbers. But nevertheless, it is something that you should be aware of that may happen. And so if you really are interested in EB5 and you want to move forward, again, this is all the more reason to do so quickly, because you may be able to take advantage of the fact that there is no waiting line for Hong Kong residents now. And that's even more true if we are able to expedite a pending I-526 petition, because your ability to take advantage of no waiting line only happens after the I-526 is approved, and the current adjudication time frame is about 12 to 24 months. But with an expedite, you may well be able to enter the US much sooner and take advantage of the fact that there currently is no retrogression, no waiting line for Hong Kong-born applicants. So EB5, in sum, is a great flexible visa category. It's very straightforward with Centiline's knowledge and Miller-Mayer's knowledge of source of funds and structuring the investment. We can help you put together something that the US government will approve. Lightstone's experience in structuring EB5 compliant projects is really second to none. So it's a great opportunity for you and your family if you're looking to come to the United States and live permanently.
Let me try doing direct. Here we go. Okay. Okay, excellent. So hello everyone, my name is Oli. I'm director for Lightstone Group out in Asia. I used to spend a lot of time flying around our various markets in Asia for Lightstone, but I've been based in Hong Kong for the last year or so. So just to start off with, I'm going to introduce you to our 9th EB5 project, Lightstone Towers. It's luxury apartment rental unit building based in New York City. Lightstone's first 3 EB5 projects were very similar to this. So luxury rental buildings based in New York City. And then the next 5 were all Marriott branded hotels. So just to begin the presentation, I'm going to take a look at our key strengths for this particular project. Number 1, Lightstone's full investment is already funded in this project. So 100% of Lightstone's contribution is already there. Lightstone puts in a considerable amount of equity into all of our projects, including Lightstone Towers. Very important because it reduces the reliance. Senior loan reduces reliance on EB5 funding as well. As you know now from the previous presentations, with any EB5 project, we have to create a minimum of 10 jobs per investor for all investors to obtain that green card. With this project, we create 59 jobs as soon as the project is finished construction. So that is obviously over 5 times the required number of jobs created, but just as soon as the project is finished construction. We do have a completion guarantee in place, which I will mention, go into more detail on later on. So next advantage I would look at is the interest that investors are paid for this project, and that is 1.5% annual payment for the duration that clients' funds are in the project. And then finally is just Lightstone's track record. You can see on the right, 6 previous projects with 924 approvals. This is basically a pre-approval by USCIS of the project documents. Lightstone has had over 1,000 EB5 investors now in those previous 8 projects, and 100% approval rates on the 526s. So if we just take a closer look now at Lightstone, so the developer behind this project, here you can see David Lichtenstein, our CEO, who is himself a billionaire. He has around personal assets around $1.6 billion. And he founded Lightstone in 1988. Since then, he's grown the company to become one of the largest privately held real estate developers in the US today. So Lightstone now has around $6.5 billion in assets under management. And as you can see from this slide, it's a hugely diversified real estate developer. A presence in around 28 states, headquarters in New York, with a lot of experience developing specifically this type of project in New York as well, but really developing all types of different real estate asset classes. So because Lightstone is such a large developer, we're often in the news. So you can see just a few examples here. Lightstone is in the Real Deal, New York Times a lot. Just for full kind of clarity and transparency, whenever there are news articles like these released about us, we will send them out to all investors and agents as well. Lightstone always also releases monthly newsletters for the projects, and these are released on the 1st of every month, sent out to individual clients as well. These will include details of how the construction's going, photos of construction, just to see how it's progressing, how many jobs we've created, and a letter from Jonathan, our CIO. So we included this slide just to give a general idea of the kind of financial institutions that Lightstone partners with. So you can see we've raised $2.9 billion from partners like these since 2016. So Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Freddie Mac, a lot of these financial institutions have invested in Lightstone's previous EB5 projects as well. So this slide is very important, especially for EB5 clients. To my knowledge, Lightstone is the only EB5 developer with a credit rating. So that is A+, A1 from Standard & Poor's and Moody's. So obviously two of the world's largest credit rating agencies. They analyze Lightstone as a whole, the executive team, Lightstone projects, and they work out essentially just how safe it is to lend Lightstone money. That is basically what a credit rating is. So for EB5 investors, it is essentially a loan that they are making to the project company. So in general, the higher Lightstone's credit rating, the safer it is to lend Lightstone money. So here we have 3 third-party organizations that oversee the entire process. Firstly, Lightstone is required to be in compliance with the SEC for this project. So they hire securities attorneys that write all of the documentation, PPM, that kind of thing. NMS Capital, who are the licensed broker-dealer in this project as well. They are reviewing all of this documentation. So both of those groups just ensure that SEC requirements are met. So essentially full transparency and full accuracy portrayed to investors. Secondly, the accountants or auditors behind this project, the Isaac Goldstein, who audit just EB5 funds flowing from clients, investors into the project. They will issue annual reports, so all clients can actually check these reports and see that their funds are being spent for what they agreed upon. And then thirdly, the escrow account is Granite. Clients will transfer funds to this third-party escrow account and not directly to Lightstone or to the project company. Lightstone has to meet certain requirements outlined in the agreement we sign with investors before they can actually use these funds for the project. So here we have, in my opinion, probably the key strength of our EB5 projects. Firstly, the 526 guarantee. This is legally binding, of course. So if for any reason investors' 526 application is denied, you've got this guarantee here that 100% will be refunded back to that client within 30 days. This is personally signed by our CEO. Second guarantee here is a project completion guarantee, basically guaranteeing that the project will finish construction. If, for example, there's cost overruns, construction problems, we have this completion guarantee in place. The project will finish. This is important really for 2 reasons. Firstly, it protects the investor's immigration side, the green card, because remember, at time of construction completion, we have already created 59 jobs per investor. Many, many more jobs than we need for all investors to obtain their green cards. So essentially guaranteeing completion of the project, helping to guarantee those jobs will be created. Secondly, it actually helps to protect the investment itself as well, guaranteeing that the project will be a completed luxury apartment building based in New York City, which will of course have value. Just skip the video for now. So here, let's take a closer look at the project location. So you can see the blue star is the location of the project. So just across the river from Manhattan. It's located in the Bronx in an area called Mott Haven. Really an up and coming developing neighborhood. There's a huge amount of spending happening here, both public and private, public from New York City government. And this area, actually, the Bronx has the lowest vacancy rate out of any borough in New York City, and a very, very high proportion of renters, around 88%. So a great fit for a luxury rental apartment building like Lightstone Towers. This is generally the model that Lightstone incorporates for all of their luxury apartments in New York. So we build slightly outside of Manhattan, but right on top of subway stops. So it's very easy to get into Manhattan and jump on the subway in around 15 minutes or so, as you can see here, to get to Central Park or Columbia University. But slightly outside of Manhattan, so it's slightly more affordable. There are much larger open spaces. For example, Lightstone Towers will have all the amenities you could possibly need: basketball court, rooftop pool, lounges, swimming pools, and that kind of thing. So here we have a third-party appraisal company called Marshall and Stevens give the project an appraisal over the next few years. So as you can see here, the project budget in 2020, that is the 511 million value there. Loan maturity date, EB5 loan maturity date in 2026, they have estimated the value of the project will grow to be around 637 million. And as you can see on the right there, that value is much, much higher than the value the project would need to be to repay EB5. And I should mention again, this is a third-party appraisal company giving a very, very conservative evaluation of the project. So now on to job creation in a bit more detail. As I mentioned, we are looking for 73 investors in the project. So for every investor, minimum of 10 jobs. For everyone to obtain their green card, we would have to create 730 jobs as a minimum. In 2023 December, which is when the project construction is due to finish, 4,332 jobs are estimated to be created, which is where the 59 construction jobs per investor comes from. And I should mention that we will have that completion guarantee in place, essentially guaranteeing sufficient job creation. The project will then go on to create even more jobs through operations, up to around 4,652 jobs. Okay, so just to run over Lightstone's previous EB5 projects quickly now. This was the first, so again, luxury apartments in New York City, Liberty Gardens 1. We had 120 EB5 investors in this project, 100% approval rate. And this project has close to 100% occupancy rate as well. Lightstone's second project, Liberty Gardens 2, 100 EB5 clients in this project. Again, 100% approval and close to 100% occupancy rate. You can see at the bottom, all of these projects I'm showing you now here have the 924 approvals as well. This was Lightstone's third project, Wall Street Tower. 200 EB5 clients in this project. And again, 526, 924 approval. So then we started with Marriott Hotels. You can see on the left, Marriott Times Square, Empire State Marriott on the right, both already open, both with 526 and 924 approvals. 140 EB5 clients at Marriott Times Square and 126 clients in Empire State Marriott. Marriott at NYU on the left, and then Marriott Miami Beach on the right, both already open and very successful. So Marriott at Miami Beach actually opened a month ago or so, and Marriott at NYU is actually on NYU campus. So we had 140 EB5 clients at NYU Marriott, and then Miami Beach Marriott, we had 95. Construction for Miami Beach Marriott, even despite COVID, was still ongoing and stuck to schedule. So this was our previous EB5 project just before Lightstone Towers, flagship Marriott located in downtown Los Angeles, so right across the street from the Staples Center. 136 EB5 clients in this project. Construction is ongoing, and similarly with Miami Marriott, still sticking to schedule, going as planned, despite COVID and the precautions that we had to take there. So just to finish off now, I'll run over those key strengths once again for this specific EB5 project. Number one, Lightstone's investment is already fully funded. Very important because Lightstone is then therefore able to guarantee project completion. You have two guarantees here. First, the 526 refund guarantee in case of 526 denial, guaranteeing a full refund within 30 days. And I should mention again that we've had over 1,000 EB5 clients, never had to use that refund guarantee because we've had 100% approval rates, but the guarantee is there just in case. And the second guarantee is the project completion guarantee. Number three, job creation. So very, very strong job creation with Lightstone Towers, 59 jobs per investor as soon as the project is finished construction. So that will be December 2023. And then moving on, Lightstone's track record, as I mentioned, over 1,000 EB5 clients, 100% approval. It's our 9th EB5 project, and we have specific EB5 experience with this type of real estate asset class. And I should mention again here that multifamily luxury apartment buildings like this have largely been proven to be hugely recession resistant. So a very, very good investment to be making right now. And that brings me on to the location advantage. To my knowledge, the only EB5 project at the lower price point in New York City. A key selling point, really key advantage for Lightstone Towers is this location. And then finally, the team in place for EB5, very important. So Lightstone, developer behind the project, we have over 30 years of development experience with this specific type of real estate project. Hill West will be the architects behind the project. And then of course, Centerline in Hong Kong, one of the largest, best immigration agencies here in Hong Kong, who will help you through the entire process. Combining all of those kind of key facts together, we like to say they'll all help EB5 clients achieve really the two goals of EB5, which we think are achieving the 829 approval, getting the permanent green card, and then getting the 900,000 principal investment amount paid back at the end of the investment period. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Oli, and thanks, Nick. And I think it's almost the end of today's webinar. So I just have a brief conclusion in Cantonese. So I change the language, right? 多謝大家先嗱，今日因為都內容豐富啊，咁就都有少少 overrun 嘅嗰個時間都幾緊迫嘅，咁所以咧就 再講多一次啦。咁其實講座我哋就因為時間緊迫就不設問答環節嘅，但係講座嘅所有 PPT 咧可以分享翻俾大家咧。同埋我哋可以再預約翻一個1對1嘅諮詢嘅，咁我哋可以慢慢傾。一般嚟講1對1嘅諮詢可以詳細傾嘅時候，可能會用個半鐘啦，至到我試過最多係3個半鐘都試過嘅。咁呢個冇問題嘅，因為每個屋企嘅或者每個客人嘅情況都唔同嘅，因為大家可能聽過頭先阿 Oli 講嘅 project 啦，阿 Nick 講嘅 immigration 嘅rules 啊 regulations 啊。可能越聽咧就越多疑問都唔頂嘅嚇，咁包括有冇其他 project 又好，咁你講嘅條例將來嘅展望嘅變化，咁佢會講到係6月30號係一個好關鍵嘅日子啦。如果你講得切嘅話，就可以 clear 咗啲 uncertainty 啦，即係可以以現有嘅 rules 去申請啦，又唔需要擔心將來嘅變化咁樣等等啦。咁所以咧就我哋會可以預約翻大家嘅。咁如果有朋友睇到呢個video。但係未有我哋同事聯絡你嘅，你可以 WhatsApp 或者打電話俾我，我係中原移民顧問嘅總監崔偉輝。我電話係96462316。好，今日多謝大家先。Thanks all. Thanks Oli and thanks Nick. That's for today. Okay. Hello. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.